Now, in COVID-related news, we return to the tarmac. Israeli airliner El Al rejecting the finance ministry's $50 million aid plan. Instead, El Al CEO Avigal Sorek demanding double as compensation for the, quote, damages caused to El Al by the state's decisions. The current recovery plan would see El Al cut its fleet by 35% to just 29 planes, as well as fire some 1,500 employees, on top of the 2,000 already laid off. Consumer behavior expert and assistant professor Vili Abraham joining me to discuss. Vili, thanks so much for being with us. Now, what do you make of El Al's counter offer?
Well, the government is offering 50 million shekels, and the owner has to infuse 43 million. So we're talking about more or less 100 million. It's short of the 150 million that the company needs. And if you read the reports published in the media in the last few days, the CEO claims that competitors have been receiving much higher aids. For example, he says that at least 50%. Well, you know, Aaron, I like to check these things. I like numbers. And I did check how much do their competitors get in Europe, for example. So I looked into Air France KLM, which has a fleet of around 330. I calculated how much money I divided the money they got, which is 12 billion, by the number of fleet, and I got $38 million, which is at least 4 times as much as El Al has received per airplane, according to the CEO himself.
So you're saying that his request is actually more than fair?
Absolutely. Absolutely. His competitors have received much, much more in support.
What are the consequences should El Al not get the money that they're requesting? Are we talking shutdown? Are we talking bankruptcy?
Well, it can go as far as that, but in the meantime, we're talking about the layoff of about 1,500 employees. We're talking about cutting down the fleet from 45 to 29. And also narrowing the destinations and the number of flights per day. This could really bring El Al, the national airline, into a very serious situation and even a threat of bankruptcy. And I think it's a pity because, you know, it's not only the national airline, it's a brand, it's even a global brand. It has made a name for itself as a very secure airline. And it's really a pity that it cannot get all the funds it needs in order to survive.
Why do you think that the finance ministry is so reticent to meet El Al in the middle here, or you know, provide a little bit more? Or is it really just too early in the negotiations to ask that question?
Well, I'm not sure whether the government will be able to provide as much because, as you know, the budget deficit is really, really huge, the biggest in the country's history. I looked into other industries. Other industries have received less than El Al has received. If you look at small businesses, if you look at the self-employed, they got a lot of support. And I guess the government has run out of money in order to be able to support. And I hope that somehow they can raise the money either by an external investor or somehow to get this money infused. Otherwise, it will have to cut its force drastically and really put itself into dire straits because, you know, the problem is really that there are not enough tourists coming into the country. September 19th, small groups of tourists were able to flow into the country, groups of 5 to 30 people. Hopefully this will boost its business, but I'm not sure whether this will be enough. It might be too little, too late.
All right, now you mentioned, you know, maybe turning to foreign investments. You know, how much are we talking here? Can El Al survive waiting that long? How many more employees does it have to lay off to stay afloat for such a thing to happen? And as you said, you know, what kind of situation are we leaving in El Al really with when they're asking for what you are saying is a fair amount, but the government, as you also said, can't necessarily afford to pay it?
Well, if things go as they go now and it doesn't get the 150 million that it needs, it will have probably no choice but to downsize its labor force and again, sell some of its airplanes. We're talking about selling 16 airplanes. And the smaller it will become, the less the competitive advantage it will have over its international competitors, which are huge. They're really huge, and it really puts the company into a serious situation, which really threatens its existence.
Yeah, it sounds like a downward spiral, which I think we can all agree is something we want to avoid. Billy Abraham, thank you so much for joining us and sharing some of your insights with us.
It was a pleasure to be here.